Welcome back to the Communication Mastery podcast with me, Mark Burlinson. In this season in 2026, we're going to spend some time looking back and replaying some of the episodes that some of you have asked about in your comments. And in between those, I'm going to be back with little snippets each week of helpful information that you can put into practice in your business, in your life, to help you grow your communication mastery. And so today, I want to look back to the episode we just saw 2 weeks ago, episode 10. That was a great conversation with the folks at the Better Business Bureau. They have a real heart to see small and medium-sized businesses succeed. And that's why I love working with them. I'm a Better Business Bureau accredited business myself. And also I've been working with them for here in the Eastern Carolinas, excuse me. We've got some special benefits for BBB accredited businesses, and those are in the pipeline, but I'm hoping they'll be completed by the time this episode releases. And if so, I'll put a link in the show notes for you to click on. If you don't see the link there, then go to my website after you've listened to the episode and send me a message. I'd be glad to send you the details of those. But some good discounts and some great benefits. If you are a BBB accredited business, you can get special access to some of the wisdom and the insight that I have to offer in communication. So on that episode, in that conversation, we talked about the benefits in small business and in mid-sized businesses. And also we touched on nonprofits, because the community benefits when small businesses thrive, especially in small town America. And that's a real passion of mine, is to see our communities, our smaller communities thriving with businesses that are not dysfunctional, where communication is really front and center for the sake of teamwork and for connecting with customers. And then when you think about the nonprofit world, that's another area that really I'm passionate about, because when a nonprofit's mission is hindered by poor communication, that grieves me. But whatever the nonprofit's mission is, effective communication always increases the impact, always increases the return on the mission and the values that they're living to express. In that conversation with Nick and Meredith, we also touched on the interpersonal and personal benefits of coaching, because if I can help you to be more effective, that really will help those that you work with and those that you live with. And when you understand yourself using the Life Languages Communication IQ tool, then what we're really doing is equipping you to handle life's challenges more easily. Whether that's the challenges at work, whatever you do, it might be challenges with those you work with, or it may be challenges with those that you work under, or it may be challenges with those that you're working for, your customers and your clients. But if you're equipped to handle those challenges more easily, more quickly, then you can get on with what you're good at. That's what really we want to achieve through this podcast. And so today, out of that conversation, I wanted to zero in on a challenge that I've seen a number of my clients face, and it may be applicable to you as well. And that is where we see everything through just one communication style, maybe your primary communication style. And we tend to think, well, I'm like this, and therefore the whole of life has to be filtered through that lens. And that makes you somewhat inflexible, whether it's inflexible in terms of, I can't do anything if I can't think about it for a day or two first. Or it may be that you can't cope with people around you who show emotion because that's not something that's familiar to you. Or it may be that you have to have everybody jump on board and get everything on track quickly, just the way you would want it, and find it hard to admit that others may not have that style high in their communication profile. That tendency to see ourselves through my primary language can always be a challenge in communication. So I want to reiterate what we've said many times on this podcast. You speak all 7 communication styles, all 7 life languages in some shape or form. Now, you may not be strong in all of them. In fact, it's very rare to be strong in all of them. But even the weakest ones you can speak when it's required, when it's beneficial. And so learning to adapt into the other languages that don't come first for you is a skill that every one of us benefits from learning. And that's what I want to zero in on. What are some of the ways that you can increase your multilingual skills, increase your adaptability, if you like? And the first thought I had as I reflected on that is that you can train your second or third language to challenge your first language. So if you've done your profile through the Life Languages from my website, you'll have a profile picture of how you prefer to communicate. And you may have 2 or 3 languages that are stronger than others, but it's very rare to have only one language that's strong and the rest weaker. So for example, let's say you have your first language is the influencer language. The passion of the influencer language is to encourage. And that's a great passion to be able to express in settings. But there are times where encouraging isn't going to fit what's needed for communication to be effective. And so if you only see yourself through your first language, that primary language, and you're only ever speaking that influencer language, then there are going to be times when you don't connect with people because they don't want to be encouraged in the way that you would do. So maybe your second language is the responder. It's another emotive language, but it's one that cares and protects rather than encourages enthusiastically. There's a big contrast between those two languages, even though they're both feeling based. And so you can get your responder language, the one that cares and wants to wrap around to protect, to challenge your influencer tendency to always come through with encouragement, and to say, wait, what about caring for this person? What about protecting this person as well as trying to encourage them? So you can train another language in your profile to kind of challenge you. I've sometimes said it on this podcast that you've got more than one voice in your head. And sometimes we've learned to only listen or only think that the valid one is the loudest one, when actually it would benefit us to listen to some of those quieter voices as well. Another example of training one of your lower languages to challenge your highest one would be maybe with your filter question. In any communication, each language has its own filter question. Let's move to thinking and action languages, because we talked about emotive ones. If your primary language, your first language in your profile is maybe the shaper language, where your filter question is, do you have a plan? Is there a plan? What is the plan? And everything has to be about the plan in order for you to feel comfortable. Well, maybe you know that there are settings where you can't have a plan, or it's not appropriate to focus on the plan. Maybe all we're doing is hanging out with some friends. Well, what's the plan, everybody? Well, we don't want to be that structured for the next hour or 3. We just want to hang out. And so you can challenge that shaper priority in your profile with one of your other languages. Maybe you could challenge it with a contemplator approach of, am I interested in this as the filter question? Who am I interested in this group? What do I want to find out about that person? How can I zero in on what's going on below the surface for this person that maybe I don't know them as well? That kind of thing. Or maybe action would be a better way to approach it. The filter question for the doer language, the very practical doer language, maybe not too much of a jump from the shaper, because the shaper wants to see things progressing according to a plan. If you can train your doer language to also add in the filter question of, are you doing your share, to ask it of yourself, but also to ask it of those around you, are you doing your share of what everyone's doing right now? And so if it's just a group of friends hanging out and just taking a couple of hours to do nothing in particular, your shaper language may find that distressing because there doesn't seem to be a plan. But if you look around at who's doing their share of being friendly, of helping out with the food or the snacks or whatever it might be, that can help you to become more multilingual and then to be able to form stronger connections with the people around you. A lot of it depends on the circumstances and being able to figure out which language do we need to be speaking for this setting and this moment to be effective as best it can be. So that's one way that you can challenge that singular focus on one language if you find that's a challenge for you in some settings. Here's another way that I found very beneficial, particularly in the workplace, is you pick a partner who you trust to challenge you. It may well be somebody who you know they've got your back, but they speak a different first language than you do. It's often something we do when we do workshops for teams in businesses, is to say, if you want to grow your knowledge of a particular language, look at the results for this team and find somebody who's stronger in that language than you are, and then follow them around for a bit, or get lunch with them, or have them watch you to see where you get to speak their primary language, maybe in a way that feels unfamiliar to you. So the person you trust, but who doesn't share your first language, if you tell them, listen, I feel stuck in whatever language it might be. I feel stuck in my first language. My first language is contemplator, and I feel stuck in just thinking all the time. And I know I need to close the gap between thinking and actually doing something. Well, your first language is the doer language, for example, and you see what needs to be done. Well, why don't you watch for me getting stuck in thinking, and would you do me a favor, and when you see me stuck in thinking, challenge me, maybe ask me, how could you approach this moment, this challenge, this setting? How could you approach this through one of your other languages? You see how they're asking me in a way that gets me to think some more, but to switch to another language. And that's a helpful way for me to begin to break that dependency on just the top language and begin to move into some of the others. Again, I'm giving you random examples, but if you look at your profile, you'll begin to see some specific ideas of, oh, okay, these two languages are kind of close together. This one comes next, and it's not that far away. How can I raise this language up to challenge the first one? How can I allow the first one to back off in some settings where my third one would be more useful? Those kinds of things. My goal is to become more multilingual. My goal is to become more adaptable so that in any moment I can process that this is the language would be most valuable in the two of us or the three of us or the team of us, whoever it may be. Here's a third way you can challenge primary language dependency, if I could call it that. And that is that you focus on the distress flares of your primary language. Go back to your report and figure out what are the distress flares I'm looking for in this language, and then train yourself to catch them sooner and then to mitigate them more fully. So let's say your primary language is the mover, and the mover's distress flares are to attack, demand, attack. And so if you catch yourself coming over demanding or coming over as attacking someone's motives, what is your motive? That's the filter question in that language. If you can spot yourself doing that, which is a challenge when it's your first language because you do it all the time, or you do it more easily, you do it more naturally without noticing it. But if you can train yourself to notice the distress flares, oh, this is not me being courageous, this is me being demanding. If you can catch the difference, then you can mitigate it more quickly by going back to answering the filter question, what's your motive, getting into meeting the need from others, those kinds of steps, the things we've talked about in earlier episodes. So if you focus on those distress flares to become fluent in them for your primary language, that will help you to see when you need to be in another language because your first language is in distress. Hope that makes sense to you. Once you see it, you can adapt to it. You can switch into another language in your profile, and then you'll find connection works far better than it would have done otherwise. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean a lot to me if you'd rate and review the podcast so it helps more listeners to find us. But also, would you give me your feedback on things you'd like to hear about in future episodes? And remember to share the episode with a friend if you see something that would benefit them as well. You can reach me with feedback through my website at markburlinson.com. Just click on the contact button and send me a message. I respond to everyone personally, and I really want to hear from you. So thank you again for listening, sharing, reviewing, and giving me your feedback.